Hello and welcome to our Beyond Employment webinar. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'll take you through how we're going to be running today's session and a little bit about what's to come. So this is a webinar, as we say, for experienced professionals, and it's all about exploring what comes next with honesty, clarity, and there's absolutely no pressure here. This is very much a space for you to step back and think. It's likely you're in a busy day, rushing about, lots to do. But this is your time to step back and think, and we've created a session that allows you to really kind of get a sense of what's the opportunity here for you. So over the next 60 minutes, we're going to be exploring what's really going on. And we start to look at, from our experience as psychologists and coaches and business owners, sharing about what holds people back generally. So we can learn from others, and also thinking about what might help you in terms of moving forward and what this actually looks like in real life. So a few things to know about today's session. Cameras and names are optional. You're more than welcome just to sit back and listen, absorb, take it in. And you may even be watching this recording in your own time as well. So if you do want to engage, fantastic, but this is your space to engage in however that feels right for you. You'll be pleased to know we're not going to spend the whole of this time together selling to you, but we do want to show a little bit more to you about our programme for those of you who want to take the opportunity. And so in the last 10 minutes, Gary will be taking you through that. If you feel like at that point you want to step out, absolutely fine. But that, just to let you know, that will be coming at the end, where you can get to see the benefits and opportunity from how we could be working together. And as we said earlier, this is a thinking stage, so you don't have to have any decisions. There's no expectation to come in with a particular plan, a decision, or even a specific question. We just ask you to be curious and to keep open and interested for yourself, really, in terms of what we're sharing here today. Nothing to perform, no way that we're expecting you to be. Just listen, reflect, and take away whatever is useful for you and your particular context. Who are we? For those of you who don't know us, we are the Beyond Employment team. So I am Jill Chapman. I'm a co-founder of Create Flow. I'm an occupational psychologist and a chartered coach and psychologist. And so my work is all about helping people through transformations and helping businesses transform and change. But I've worked for many years with people in terms of those career transitions and helping people get clarity and take action that helps them to get the outcomes that they're really looking for.
I'm Gary King. I'm the other half of Create Flow. I'm a business psychologist and I'm also a coach and help people transition in their careers and develop their leadership. But I also have a literal degree in adventure, which is why I have a particular interest in understanding risk and decision making, which is, I suppose, uniquely informs from one perspective why that might be the case. So yeah, I have bring a lot of outdoor and experiential backgrounds into how we explore risk and understand really what are risks, real and perceived, and how that informs our decision making and ability to judge stuff. So it's quite interesting stuff. So yeah, looking forward to talking to you about that a little bit more.
And I'm Fran Stobart. I'm a business coach and consultant from Good Company. So I have my own business for 17 years, which I built up and sold before the pandemic. And then I went to do an MBA at Warwick University because I wanted to understand the tools that help you to make more of an informed decision when you're running a business. So my role is really to help you with the kind of practical side of shaping all of your resources into a commercial offering and spotting the opportunities that are waiting for you out there. So that's me.
Thanks, Fran. Thanks, Gary. And this is a picture of us at Turenbury Farm, where we're based in Welwyn, Hertfordshire. So over to you, Fran.
Okay, so I want to start with some numbers because I think they matter, and because I know that a lot of people in this situation are questioning their instincts and wondering if they may be overreacting. These numbers are here to tell you that they're not. The job market for experienced professionals looks very different from how it did 10 years ago. Restructuring, AI-driven transformation, and sustained economic pressure have created conditions where capable, established people are questioning their security in ways that they never expected to. I want to give you a picture of what's actually happening out there because most people are only getting fragments of it. So, according to Monster's 2026 Work Watch report, a survey of over 1,500 workers, 52% of people now expect nationwide layoffs to increase. 40% expect the job market to worsen. Another 40% expect no improvement. So that's 80% of the workforce bracing for things to stay difficult or get harder. Only 1 in 5 thinks that it's going to improve. So 4 out of 5 people currently in work think things are going to stay the same or get worse. That's a considered assessment of the environment that people are working in at the moment. And for white collar workers specifically, confidence in pay fairness has fallen below blue collar workers for the first time in 3 years. If you've been feeling like your seniority and experience aren't being valued in the way that they once were, it's not a personal failing, it's a pattern that's showing up across all the data. There's one more thing worth pointing out. Harvard Business School's Professor Joseph Fuller has made the observation that generative AI is the first technology whose impact increases with income. The higher your pay, the less certain your future looks. That's a striking reversal of how technological disruption has worked historically. It used to be lower paid, more repetitive roles that were more at risk, and that's no longer the story. The roles that involve complexity, judgment, and senior decision making are now in the frame in ways that they have never been before. It's not a reason to panic, but it's certainly a reason to think. And here's what's happening as a result. 1 year ago, 93% of workers said they planned to look for a new job. This year, that number has dropped to 43%. That's a remarkable shift in 12 months, a 50-point collapse in job search intent. And the reason it's dropped isn't because people are suddenly content. Among workers choosing to stay put, only about a quarter cite genuine job satisfaction as the reason. The majority is staying because of concerns about job security and fewer good options on the other side. That's calculated risk management rather than loyalty. People are staying still because moving feels too uncertain. Economists call this low hire, low fire stagnation. Companies aren't dramatically cutting headcount, but they're also barely growing it. Workers are neither fired nor pulled forward, they simply stay still. And when you're stuck in that kind of environment, capable, experienced, wondering whether this is really what the next 10 years is all about, it's incredibly easy to dismiss your own restlessness, but it's actually a rational response to a real set of conditions. So that's the external picture. But before I move on, I want to tell you what we heard directly from people when we ran our own survey before building Beyond Employment. When the results came back, people described feeling well paid but running on low energy, secure but constrained, going through the motions of a career that still looked good on the outside but had stopped feeling like theirs, aware that something needed to change but genuinely unsure what a realistic alternative looked like. That gap between knowing something isn't quite right and being able to see a clear path forward is what keeps people stuck for longer than they need to be. The biggest barriers people named were financial risk, not knowing where to start, fear of getting it wrong, and a quiet worry that their experience might not translate into something that they could actually build for themselves. A creeping sense that the skills that got them this far were somehow context dependent, that they only worked inside the particular organisation they were in and wouldn't survive the move to working for themselves. I want to say directly that this worry is almost always wrong. The judgment, the credibility, the ability to manage complexity and navigate difficult situations belongs to you and not your employer. What often gets in the way is the absence of a clear picture of how it could work and a safe space to think it through without pressure, rather than the absence of capability, which is what today is and what the programme is for. Anyone who wants to go further after this. So before I hand over to Gary, I want to leave you with this. Staying put because you've actively decided it's the right choice is completely valid. But if you're staying because leaving feels too uncertain, or because you don't have enough information to make a real decision, or because nobody has given you a proper framework for thinking it through, Gary's going to pick up from here on why this kind of decision feels so hard to think about clearly, even when the logic seems straightforward. Over to you, Gary.
Thanks, Fran. So, slides disappeared. Okay. So, what we're looking at, what we want to do now is look a bit more closely at what's actually happening underneath all of this, because for most people, what's holding back isn't a lack of ideas or capability or even motivation. It's how we experience uncertainty and how we interpret the risk when things feel unclear. So it's that interpretation of the risk. Fear is immediate. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead there. One of the most useful distinctions we can make here is between fear and risk. So fear is immediate and it's physical and it's urgent and it's real. Risk, on the other hand, is something we can assess. It's something that we can step back and think about more clearly. But in moments like this, they feel identical. It's very difficult to distinguish between them in the moment. And when it happens, we tend to respond to career decisions with fear. And what's actually needed is a clearer view of the risks. So there's a well-established pattern in how we make decisions. We tend to feel potential losses more strongly than potential gains. So the idea of losing what we have, such as income, status, and identity, can feel heavier than the possibility of something better. And alongside that, the familiar starts to feel safe. Better the devil you know thinking starts to creep in, even when it isn't safe. So staying where we are can feel like the responsible choice, even when it comes with its own risks. So a framework that I found helpful in making sense has come from my background working in adventure and outdoor settings. So we tend to experience situations along a spectrum. On one end, what we might call non-adventure, and on the other is misadventure. And somewhere in the middle is this sweet spot, which is adventure. Non-adventure, we've got we can consider that as a bit of autopilot. We're not really in focus. We don't have that level of attention. We're just wandering along, fully on autopilot. Misadventure is when things are in a heightened state, probably stress and anxiety are kicking in because we are suddenly outside of our skill set, outside of our knowledge base, and we are well outside of our comfort zone. And it, that is a considerable problem for us. In that moment, we can go into all types of regulation states. But adventure as a sweet spot is where we have that heightened awareness, kind of like a HD view. Everything's heightened. All of our senses are alive. We're in flow. So that's why I call it a sweet spot. And this is where it becomes really relevant to what we're talking about today, because we often mislabel the path that's in front of us. So we can call it misadventure before we've even begun. We might consider actually that adventure is misadventure because in advance we overanalyze or we actually dismiss our experience and skill set as not being enough. So the brain is trying to protect us, and it will default us into our worst case thinking, basically. So uncertainty gets translated into danger, even when the evidence doesn't fully support that. So we've got to be careful, and we've got to have that ability to be aware of where we are operating from. So rather than trying to solve anything, I just want to invite you into a short reflection, actually. There's a little activity here. There's 5 questions on the slide. And give you a moment to really respond to that. So if you've got a pen and paper, maybe consider, in the context of where you are right now, what feels uncertain for you. I'll just give you a moment to write a few notes down on that. What feels uncertain for you? Okay. What are you worried might happen? What are you worried might happen? What kind of risk is it actually? Are we looking at financial? Is this reputational? Is it identity based? Really pick into where you perceive this risk to stem from. And I think this is really important. What's the risk of doing nothing? What is the risk of staying as you are, staying where you are? And the final thought, what small step could give you more information? What tiny action could you take? Really simple, maybe later today or tomorrow, that will actually provide you with some missing context or some new information that might help inform you better. Okay. So what we often find at this point is that none of this is entirely new. It's more like putting a language to something you've already been sensing. So the goal isn't to tell you what to think, it's to help you name what's already there. So that way you can respond more intentionally rather than just react. Back to Fran, I think. Let's see if
Thanks, Gary.
allows you to take over like
Okay.
gremlins.
So when people imagine self-employment, they tend to land in one of two places. Either it's the highlight reel, the freedom, the autonomy, the idea of doing exactly what you love every day, or it's the cautionary tale, the instability, the isolation, the fear of getting it wrong. Neither of those versions is particularly useful if you're trying to make a real decision. And here's the version that I actually recognize. The work splits roughly 50-50. About half of it is the thing that you're actually good at, the expertise, the craft, the thing that you would actually be doing for a client, the work that drew you to the idea in the first place. And this part is often genuinely energizing in a way that employment hasn't been for a while. The other half is everything else: sales, admin, chasing invoices, making decisions with incomplete information, managing your own focus and your own momentum on days when nobody's telling you what to do. That part is real and it requires more energy than people expect, but it is manageable, especially when you go in knowing it's there rather than discovering it 6 months later. and you have the right support. So what changes when you work for yourself? The things that shift when you make the move are not always the ones people anticipate. The decision-making changes significantly. In employment, even quite senior employment, there's usually a layer above you, someone who owns the final call and whose approval you're working within. When you work for yourself, that layer disappears. Every decision, the significant ones and the small ones, are yours. And at first, that can feel genuinely disorienting. Not because you're not capable of making the decisions, but because you've spent years operating within a structure that made the framework clear. When the framework goes, it takes a while to build your own. Values clarity happens quite fast, and it's often surprising. When you're employed, you're operating within someone else's priorities. What the organisation values shapes what you spend your time on, whether or not it aligns with what you actually care about. But when you work for yourself, you find out fairly quickly what you're willing to do and what you're not, what you'll take on and what you'll turn down. And this turns out to be quite interesting, useful information about yourself. And then there's the identity, which Jill touched on. Many people discover once they step outside a role that their sense of self was more tied to their job title than they'd realise. That's not a criticism, it's just what happens when you spend a significant part of your adult life inside an institution. Rebuilding that sense of self is part of the process, and for most people I work with, it turns out to be a more rewarding part than they expected. It just requires a bit of time and honesty to move through it. So 3 questions to start with. I want to leave you with 3 questions. They're not a business plan. It's not a strategy. It's just a starting point for paying closer attention to what you already know about yourself. So the first one is, what do people come to you for? Not your job title or your official remit, but what do colleagues, friends and contacts actually seek you out for and trust you with? The answer to that question is usually closer to what you want to offer than anything on your CV. So I'll just give you a little while to jot down the first few things that come to mind. And then the next one is, what energizes you? And I want to make a distinction here because the answer to this is often different from what you're good at. What leaves you feeling more alive after doing it rather than depleted? That distinction matters. You can build a business around something you're competent at and be quietly miserable. The more interesting question is, what actually gives you energy? And the third question is, what are you naturally good at that other people find genuinely difficult? The things that feel almost effortless to you, these are often invisible to us precisely because they come so naturally, and we assume that everyone can do them. They usually can't, and those are frequently the things that have the most commercial value. So you could have the most intelligent, talented colleagues, and you'd be surprised that, you know, their ability to do that thing that you find really easy and simple is, you know, they really struggle with. So just have a really good look at what you're good at. And take a moment to sit with those. You don't need to answer them fully right now, but they're definitely worth writing down because the answers tend to be more specific than people expect. And I just want to close this section with something that I think is really important to say. You do not need a complete picture to take a first step. You need a starting point. Almost every person who I've worked with has successfully made this kind of transition, and I've worked with a few at this stage. They didn't begin with a finished plan. They began with a direction and a rough sense of what they might offer and who they might offer it to. And they built clarity as they moved through the conversations they had and the experiments that they ran and the feedback they received. So the clarity comes from the doing rather than the waiting until everything's resolved before starting. And my role is to provide practical tools and help you make sure that your decisions are informed so that you can move forward with confidence. What we want to give you today, and what the programme is designed to do in much more depth, is exactly that starting point. Not all the answers, just enough to take the next honest step. Okay, thanks. Over to you, Jill.
Helpful if I have a microphone on. In terms of taking the next step forward, we're talking about movement. And one of the things that's really important about gaining some momentum, getting some movement going, is to recognize that clarity comes through movement. So a bit like Fran was saying a moment ago, we don't need to kind of wait until we've got perfection, until we've got the right answer, because waiting for certainty before taking action is one of the traps that many people fall into, and often can mean that we're kind of stalling or holding ourselves back in many ways. So a lot of the work that we're going to be that we're offering and we're doing with our clients is about being able to get some movement going and gain the clarity as we move. And that clarity does come from doing, from taking action. Now, as Gary was talking about earlier as well, this isn't about forcing anyone to do anything or stepping out of a comfort zone or moving into misadventure. This is about those slow steps, the small steps. So it starts with a single step. And in terms of getting movement going, getting more clarity, clarity will come from learning, will come from insight. So through that first small step, we gain information. We gain information about ourselves. We might also gain information about how other people respond to that step. We also will start to be learning more about our options, and also we'll start to understand more about the landscape, the ecosystem of what it is that we're looking to move towards or move into. So there'll be some new insights coming every time we take a small step. Each step means that we can then be informed in taking the next step. So the kind of momentum builds as we go, and our confidence builds so that we can start to then take slightly larger steps, feeling well informed, feeling confident, putting into action what we've been learning. And each time we will be getting feedback in one way or another that helps keep us moving forwards. So this is how clarity is built, not in one single kind of action plan or one moment of revelation. It really is that iterative step by step, and that we're here to support those steps as we go. It's so important with any transition, and I think if we all reflect back on our lives through all sorts of changes and things that we've already successfully moved through, having that support around you as you step up to a challenge or as something new comes in, having the right amount of support around is essential to do that successfully. So let's have a look at the next slide. So what we can see here is that two things are always present really when we're looking at moving forward with clarity and confidence. As I've already said, clarity comes through movement. Now, the piece here as well that we often stall with or get confused with is our thinking. We put a lot of attention and focus on our good old thinking brain. But if we just stay with our thoughts and thinking about the best thing to do and making lots and lots of lists and getting caught up in all of the details of our thoughts, that can actually start to hold us back. It's the combination of thinking and doing that happen together that really is important. So although in this session, we are encouraging you to step back and have some space to think, in our program is actually a kind of equal way on both the thinking and reflection and the doing, recognizing that these aren't separate things. They can happen together, and they need to happen together. Insights really are going to come from that feedback, as I mentioned earlier. But it's amazing what we learn when we step into something that's different from what we've been doing in the past. And it's absolutely stimulating as well to start to notice how our intended market responds, how we get a sense of actually what is the part of this that matters most to us, that we're most passionate about. And we often don't find that out until we actually start talking about what it is we're doing with others or sharing our story. We continue to gain those kind of insights as we go. And even now, after we created Create Flow 6 years ago, even now, the insights continue to come into, oh, that's the most important thing here, or that's the piece that actually people want the most. So that information, the information we get in, the insights that we learn, provide some very solid grounding. And that grounding allows us then to take the next steps. But as you can hear from what I'm explaining here, there's not really an end in mind. We might have a particular goal or objective. We might have a financial goal. However, the reality is that things will keep moving forward. Even when a business is launched, even a highly successful business doesn't stop growing and moving forward. So there's always going to be new learning, new insights, and more steps to be taken. The way in which we approach this is really, really important, because as Carol Dweck talks about massively in her work around growth mindset, that we can approach everything as we move forward from a place where we recognize that we're all developing all of the time. And actually, we can start to notice that there will be some gaps. We will notice these gaps. There might be quite practical things. There might be things around, oh, I've never done a tax return, or I've never had to think about corporation tax, or, I've never had to use social media to promote my business. Absolutely, it's brilliant to start to become aware of what these gaps are in terms of taking forward an idea. But the fantastic thing is that we can develop, we can learn, we can ensure that those gaps are overcome. We find bridges, we find ways forward to make sure they don't become an obstacle. We might learn those skills ourselves, and we can learn more as adults than we ever gave ourselves credit for. And neuroplasticity and lots of the medical research also shows that our brains are capable of learning loads of new things throughout our adult life. So it's a fantastic opportunity for us to perhaps step into some new skills that we've never had before. But equally, it might be that we're becoming collaborative and we can draw in skills that might not be our own natural strengths and tap into our networks and allow others to help us to fill those gaps as well. But as Carol Dweck talks about in her research and in her work on growth mindset, everything really comes from a place of being open to practice, to reflect, to take in feedback, and to just recognize we're all human and that nothing is perfect, nobody is perfect, and that we will keep honing our skills and talents. And that's the way that we actually get towards our goals. It does take dedication and it does take hard work. As Fran was saying earlier, we're certainly not here just kind of waving a wand saying this is all going to be dreamy, and that kind of dream of running your own business or having this product, whatever it might be, it's all going to be absolutely fantastic and you'll be able to put your feet up and the money's going to come rolling in and there'll be no headaches in the future. That is not what we're saying. What we're giving you here is an opportunity to work through the challenges and to step into a new opportunity with eyes wide open and prepared, well informed, and feeling confident to keep navigating any challenges, any issues as they arise. Matthew Syed, a name that's become extremely popular with his podcasts and his books in recent years around the world of growth mindset. And his messages are really clear about how we can really improve through iteration, not inspiration. Matthew Syed talks a lot about marginal gains. His background comes from a sports background, being a table tennis champion, going to the Olympics and things not actually working out as he planned, but taking that as a learning experience and allowing that to be what allows him to really find his way into the work that he's meant to be doing and to achieve excellence and improve. So again, using the kind of growth mindset approaches, we are going to be learning together, learning on experiments where you independently are stepping out, finding new information, and then using that to adapt, that iterative opportunity to adapt, to use information to refine your offering, refine your idea, step back out, test it out again, keep improving. And it's wonderful to do that together, to get each other's feedback, to support and encourage and champion each other, which is why we're really passionate about providing this, not just as one-to-one opportunities, but also as a group to go through a program together. Because we all need that bit of extra encouragement. We all need some additional feedback, and we all need to keep kind of testing the reality with others as well. Improvement needs to be celebrated and reinforced. That's also the brilliant thing about being in a group, because sometimes we underestimate the progress we're making. So as we make improvements, we also can celebrate each improvement and what we're learning. And there's also, for those who are interested, an opportunity to gain some really in-depth feedback around your own growth mindset with Matthew Syed's Mindset Advantage profiling tool. So this can be, an additional piece that gives you really clear information about where your biggest opportunities are to develop your growth mindset as well. You've heard already this afternoon how our own systems don't like really, the reality of stepping into something new, something unfamiliar, and something that also holds a lot of uncertainty. Because what we know in terms of neuroscience and from things like the polyvagal theory work by Dr. Stephen Porges is that our systems treat any type of uncertainty like a threat. Unfortunately, our nervous systems are still wired for society and life hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They're not kind of really nuanced enough and up to date enough to deal with the challenges of the modern working world, or the modern world in general. What this actually means, therefore, is every time we're kind of wanting to step forward, wanting to make progress, wanting to kind of explore something new and unfamiliar where there's a bit of uncertainty in the mix, our systems will kind of get reactive to that. And easily we can slip into that non-adventure, or we can start to talk ourselves out of taking a little bit of adventure and a little bit of risk, or we can start to close down in terms of listening and being curious, when actually that's the thing we really need to be leaning into most. The way in which we get kind of an update, if you like, the way we can almost plug in an update to our own nervous systems is to learn some skills that help us regulate ourselves, so that our internal wiring isn't having a reactive kind of threat response. It starts to see this all as a great opportunity. And these regulation skills can really help us shift our state into one that's more open, more responsive, more curious, more innovative, and really allows us to feel much more confident and much more hopeful and optimistic towards moving to something better for the future. What does this actually feel like? Just a little activity here to emphasize how much our outcomes, if you like, are influenced by the quality and attitude of mindset that we bring to them. And it's always good to get a physical kind of sense of these things, because we can make them sound quite academic, or we can get stuck again in the logic and the thinking. But let's just do this little activity and see what you make of it. So all we need to do is, if we just take one hand up in front of us and put that hand into a fist, and now think with this fist, put something into that fist which you feel like there's a bit of frustration or anger going on for you at the moment. So something real, bring to mind something real, something that's irritating you, you're finding frustrating, there's a bit of an anger. Because actually a clenched fist is exactly, the body's natural response in our fight flight mechanisms that comes with anger, frustration. So allow it to be there, put it in that fist, and allow that fist to really get nice and tight with that reaction to that being in your mind. And now what I'd like you to do is just take your other hand and see if you can uncurl the fingers there that are in that fist. What do you notice? I mean, I'm noticing there, as I try to get my hand in there, how tightly they are in. There's not much movement there on mine. Notice what that's like for you. Can you uncurl the fingers? How tight do they feel when you've got anger, frustration there in that fist? And now what I'd like you to do is something a little bit different. I'd like you to kind of bring the other hand in with a different approach, and use this hand this time to allow the anger, the frustrated fist, to rest gently within it. And notice this hand is here to hold it and protect it. And just approach that anger in the fist in a way of saying, it's okay, I've got you now. You can settle here in this hand, there's safety here. And you might even want to just use this hand in a different way. Rather than unfurling the fingers for a moment, just kind of maybe give it a gentle squeeze, or maybe even just kind of bringing some warmth to it. But just bring some kindness almost to that fist and that anger with the other hand. See if you can find a bit of a kinder voice to that anger. Say, thank you, anger. I can see you there, but it's okay, I've got you. And let's just see what happens now. So now you can use the other hand and see if you can take away the fingers, and just notice if there's any difference for you. There might be, there might not. Mine kind of just came away quite easily there. And just give your hands a little shake out, and take a moment just to reflect on that. What was your experience from that exercise? Because this exercise isn't the kind of exercise we'll necessarily be doing in the program. But it's here just to kind of emphasize that there is definitely 100% a shift that happens when we shift our own mindset, and the way that we speak to ourselves has a massive impact on our sense of safety, and therefore our sense and ability to be able to move forward confidently, to open up, to step forward, and to adapt and take on new challenges. So there's definitely a big mindset part that can be very practical and helpful in making these adjustments and shifts. So in terms of where you are right now, as we've all said, it is a transition. This is a transition we're entering through. It's an active state. No one is stuck. Even if we might feel like in our mind that we're stuck, or we feel a bit trapped maybe, the reality is we're in quite an active time, and that there's some energy, attention, honesty needed in order to make the most of this. We're not in a paralysis, we're in a time to start to take some small movements, open up, and make some progress, even if that's slow progress. And we can still make progress even when things feel uncertain. And again, just to reinforce that action creates clarity, and that they work together. So just take a moment, think about what might be the smallest step you could take this week. Nothing that's a plan or a decision. What might be the first small honest step that you might make this week? And I might also add in there, how might you speak to yourself about that as well? How could you find the kindest voice? One that allows you to keep open and hopeful and optimistic while you're doing that. Over to you, Gary.
Thanks, Jill. I'm just going to put this in the chat now. I'm going to apply a bit of pace to this last section of the webinar, just conscious of time. So I've just put our contact details, or a link to a landing page which has all three of our contact details on there, should you wish to ask any questions, follow up about what you're learning about today and what you're hearing, if anything resonates. So everything we've been talking about today, the psychology, the reflection, and the reality of the landscape, that's exactly what this next step is designed to support. It's not just thinking about it, but having a structured way to move forwards at your pace in a way that actually fits alongside a busy professional life. So alongside the sessions, everything sits in a dedicated online portal. On the right hand side, you can see an example of that. So this is what, if you join the program, what you'll see, or an example of what you'd see. This is the workspace within the portal that you'll have access to as the program begins. So rather than things being spread across notes, emails, or separate documents, it's all brought together in one place. And this is something we've been quite intentional about building. As you move through each module, you unlock the next set of resources, tools, and guidance. So it builds progressively rather than everything all arriving at once. There's a real depth to what's in there. There's practical tools, structured guidance, and resources you can come back on and revisit when you need to. You'll also be able to track your thinking as it develops. So where you start might not be where you end up. There's room for you to develop your thinking. And also, you're not going to be starting from scratch every time. You're building on what's already there, all of the previous thinking that you've done, and all of the previous ideas you've had. So it's not just something you attend, it's something you actively use and keep coming back to as your thinking evolves. The structure is deliberately simple. It's a 12-week journey with 1 hour per week. So it's designed to fit alongside everything else you already have going on. Across those 12 weeks, there are 6 modules, each running over 2 weeks, giving you time to absorb, reflect, and apply what you're learning. Within each module, there are 2 sections. One is a more practical based and focused session, and the other is a round table style conversation where you get to explore your thinking and hear from others. Everything's recorded, so if for whatever reason you can't make a session or you want to revisit it, you're able to. Overall, it's designed to build momentum gradually so that you're not overwhelmed, but provides opportunities for you to move forwards. We start by helping you understand what you already have, your experience, your strengths, and the knowledge you've built up over all the time you've been working and through life. How that might translate beyond a traditional role, so that there's a deeper look at what you're actually taking with you rather than starting from scratch. Then in the next couple of weeks, we begin to shape that into something more tangible. So taking what you've identified and turning it into simple, clear concepts. What you might offer, who it could be for, what problems it solves, so that by the end of the first phase, you're not just thinking in abstract terms anymore. You've started to put some real shape to it. Then we move into taking that out into the real world, so that rather than staying in reflective modes, you're starting to test things out, having real conversations, putting these ideas in front of people and seeing what actually comes back. And that's where a lot of clarity starts to build. And then alongside that, there's an honest look at whether this stacks up. Not a full business plan, but a clear, grounded sense of whether something is viable for you. So that by the end of this phase, you've moved beyond just having an idea to having something that's been tested and properly thought out and thought through. Then in the final few weeks, we focus on making that more solid. So taking everything you've learned, everything you've tested, and refining it into something much more realistic and workable, building a clearer picture of what it could actually look like for you. And then in the final stage, it's about clarity on what's next, whether that's moving forwards, taking more time, or continuing to explore. The goal isn't to force a decision, it's to leave with a clear, realistic plan for what happens after the program. We want you to be feeling set up to succeed in whatever decisions you take, rather than feeling like you drop it after the course, it drops off a cliff and you don't know where to go next. So a few key points in the program. There's space for more focused one-to-one conversations, not because you need fixing, but because translating thinking into action is where most people tend to get stuck. So there's 3 points where this support is built in. At the start, there's an onboarding session before the sessions start, the main sessions start. And this is to understand where you are now, and what you're aiming for, and how to get the most from the program. And then around the midway point, once you've started testing ideas in the real world, there's space to work through what's coming up. And then at the end, to consolidate everything you've learned and get clear on what your next steps are, so that you're not left trying to piece it all together on your own, there's a final one-to-one session. What this also provides is support that's personalised to you. The group gives you structure and a shared perspective, but these one-to-one sessions give you space to work through your own situation with your questions, your hesitations, and your next steps. And the focus throughout is on moving from thinking into action, because it's very easy to take an idea but not actually move on it. So these sessions are there to help you bridge that gap, and apply what you're learning in a way that works in your real life. So just to give this a bit of context, if we were pricing at typical corporate coaching or consultancy rates, you'd be looking at something in the region of 5,000 or more. But what we've done here is design something that keeps the depth and quality, but makes it significantly more accessible. And the way we've done that is quite deliberate. You're working alongside a small group of peers at a similar stage in their ideas, which brings with it perspective, accountability, and more honest conversation. Each session builds on the last, so you're creating momentum over time rather than just having one-off insights. And importantly, this isn't something you complete and then file away. It's designed to produce tangible outputs as you go. So for those of you where this has resonated and you're starting to feel like you'd benefit from something more structured around this, this is what we've created. This program is designed for people who are ready to move from thinking into testing and building clarity. Not making big immediate decisions, but starting to take grounded, informed steps forwards. In terms of how it works practically, there are 2 options. You can either pay £1,200 up front for the full program, or £435 a month over 3 months, if spreading the cost feels more comfortable. Both give you exactly the same access. It's simply about what works best for you. And as a thank you for joining us today, there's a discounted option available if you decide within the next week. The programme is £990 in total, or if it's more comfortable to spread the cost, it's just £330 per month for the 3 months, with no additional fee for doing that. So again, it's simply about choosing what works best for you. And just to say, this is a launch pricing for the first cohort. We're expecting the programme to develop and more people to go through it, and so the price will increase for future groups. So you get the benefit being part of the first cohort. So if this feels like the right next step for you, the process is simple. Just follow the link to book your place. The link I've already shared in the chat. That's all you need to do. There's no application process, there's no interview, there's no pressure. If you've got any questions before, that same link will provide you access to Fran, Jill and myself to book a call, schedule a call with us, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions or talk you through the decision making. You're welcome to reach out. We're happy to have that conversation. And also just to say, if now isn't the right time, that's completely fine as well. The most important thing is that you leave today with something useful and a bit more clarity than when you came in. So just to leave you with this, you don't need to decide everything today. For most people, this isn't one big decision, it's a series of smaller ones. A question, a conversation, a small step. And over time, that's what builds clarity. Not a single moment of certainty, but honest movement in the right direction. So whatever you take from today, whether that's a reframe, an idea, or just slightly different way of looking at your situation, then that's enough. And thank you genuinely for being here. We know these aren't small questions to sit with. And just before we finish, if you'd like to explore this a bit further, just to reinforce that point, you can also use this QR code, which will also take you to the program page, the landing page. That's got all of the information and our contact details, as I've said. So ultimately, we're very happy to keep the conversation going, whether the time is right for you to book or not. So the link's still in the chat. No pressure to decide anything now. Just a simple way to take a next step and let us know when it feels right for you. So that's it. So thank you for being here with us. I'll give Jill and Fran an opportunity to thank you as well, but thanks for sticking with all the technical difficulties to the end, and hope to speak to you about the programme.
Yeah, thank you everybody, whether you're here live or whether you're watching the recording. It would be great to have a chat.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks very much for joining us, and yeah, I really look forward to meeting you.